Hi, I'm Dee,
Foxtime.
and we are reviewing X-Men Apocalypse.
Woohoo!
Want to give a spoiler warning?
Spoiler alert. Yeah.
Alright, so we just got back from watching X-Men Apocalypse, and, well, what did you think?
I thought out of 1 out of a 10, with all the details and all the backstories, 1,000.
Alright, so you enjoyed it. Alright, very good. Yes, the film was quite enjoyable. Wonderful visual feast. The effects are amazing. It was fun seeing some of the different variations of costume and such. I don't know, and I thought most of the characters was good seeing. It's always great seeing McAvoy and seeing Fassbender, seeing the return of the original group. Plus, of course, we got introduced to a lot of the new characters: Jean Grey, Scott Summers, Nightcrawler, Psylocke. And it was great seeing Angel as well, losing his wings and then getting the metal wings. That was all really very cool.
I thought that it was awesome and that it was very action-packed. Warning, if you do see it in the movie theaters, my ears hurt a little bit, so I plugged my ears for most of the movie.
There was a lot of large effects, big booming music, big moving effects. And I said the effects and visuals, I think, were really where this film gains its strength. Some of the small stuff, like basically when Magneto is using his powers and he's tapping into the Earth's magnetic field, you actually see the movement of all of the items and the metals and stuff moving through these giant arcing magnetic field. So that was kind of a very cool visualization. I hadn't quite seen that before, and that was really fun. The downside that I kind of saw was just kind of a lacking of storyline in some of the sub-characters. Like, Psylocke is cool, but we don't really learn much of anything about her. Storm we're briefly introduced to, but we don't really get too much into them. Angel is the same way. A lot of the Apocalypse characters, really, we don't get to see much of their backstory. They're introduced and they serve as a great visual feast, but not a whole lot of deep story going on right there. But of course, the standout on this was Quicksilver.
Okay, so when everything goes wrong and then everything explodes and everything, Quicksilver. Do. And then, let's take everyone out. Everyone's out. And then, yes. I don't want to even say. It's sad.
Much as in Days of Future Past, Quicksilver's scenes were steals. This, you can see maybe a lot of the film was almost kind of built around having these moments, these little bits. And I think they've even set the bar ahead of where they did last time. Before, it was great seeing him move around. Here, you're seeing some of the effects, a little bit more of a comical edge to it, while still keeping in lines with where the story was going. That was all great. It was a wonderful addition to have in with the group. Now, again, downsides with that scene in particular, the explosion of Xavier's Academy. That, along with even some of the ending destruction when the world is falling apart, there didn't seem to be a lot of weight given to that destruction. Yes, it was a bummer, but there wasn't much. When the world is falling apart, you expect to see a bigger effect on the world, and here it just seemed to be like in a couple of places, and yes, it was horrible afterwards, but there wasn't any consequence to it. There wasn't as much weight given to these giant world-ending effects, and that's where the movie kind of came up a little bit short for me. We also got some of the returning characters from First Class, Havoc and Moira McTaggart. And it was great seeing the return of some of these characters as well. Now, the downside of that is the time difference that goes on. From First Class, this is about 20 years later, and I do like them using different time sections. They got a great feel of the 80s. There was some great music in there. That was all fine. But seeing the time differences but not really affecting the characters did kind of pull things out. I mean, if we're in the 80s, at this point, Eric and Xavier are both probably in their 50s, and they certainly don't look that. We had Havoc coming back and introducing his brother Scott, who is also in high school or just getting out. And again, that's sort of where we had met Havoc way back when. So now it's like, this is my brother, but he should be about 20 years younger than you, and he only looks a couple of years. But that is one of the downsides of doing these time jumps, is really it's just the characters don't age in the same way. I mean, there was a the small joke that Xavier says that, you know, Moira doesn't look like she's aged today. That's kind of funny, but really it kind of pulls things out. The other thing is, of course, is Jennifer Lawrence's character as Mystique. Who is, you know, it's great seeing her. It's a great character, but that's one of the downsides, again, in this. There's a lot of ups and downs, as I'm probably throwing out here, is she was never a leader of the X-Men. She was never that type of character. So seeing her pulled back into that role was a little tough. I thought they did it really, they handled that usage of her, though, really well, as showing off the big statement that she said back in 1973 as really being the mutant that was in the forefront, and now having all of these younger characters looking up to her as kind of the persons whose appearance made that big change in her life. So while using her as kind of a leader position in this, I didn't think totally worked. The fact that they did integrate that in as more of the younger kids having a great respect and admiration for this mutant that in their eyes was the really first to reveal themselves publicly to the world. That I thought they did and handled really well. Any other favorite parts that you liked?
Let me think. Oh, when all the gold was melting and it raised up the platforms that Xavier and everyone else was sitting on, or laying down on. And my favorite part of the movie was when Xavier was being pushed down by Apocalypse, and then he said, "You won't win because you're not, because you're alone." And then Jean walks in, and then Xavier says, "Unleash your full power," and then Phoenix. That was probably my favorite part.
Great bit. We did get a little bit of the introduction of Phoenix within Jean's great character, which was nice. Now, we did get a little cameo by Wolverine in this film, which was amazing. They did a little trip to the Weapon X facility. They broke out Wolverine, and a couple of big little points with him. One of the best sequences of his berserker rage that we have seen yet. There is blood, there is slicing, there is craziness, there is just... That is what, for a Wolverine film, please give us more of that. Now, there was one moment in there that I didn't know if it really was necessary, and that is when Wolverine escapes out of the Weapon X facility. There's that moment where Jean calls him back, and they have a little moment and a little connection. One, with them releasing Wolverine from the middle of the Weapon X, it was kind of a nice moment that later on they might meet up. Now, we do know that with the events of Days of Future Past, that was the technical reset of the clock, which sort of wiped out all of the earlier X-Men films so they could do new things. However, I think it would have been more interesting to let him run off and not bring him back and have that little moment between them. One, it preserves their meet for later on if it did happen in the original storyline. And two, I just think that it kind of separated that out. It would have been more interesting to have had Wolverine wandering the world in that kind of crazed bit to then slowly recover memories. And I mean, that's a personal approach to it, but I'm not sure if that was all necessary. In fact, I could even add that on with most of the Weapon X scenes. Is part of that scene tacked on almost like they got Wolverine, they got Hugh Jackman, so they wanted to add a whole sequence. And it was a great sequence. But whether the destruction of the mansion and of the Blackbird causing all of that, I would have thought that if they didn't have Hugh Jackman, then all that would have wiped out. There would have been no need for that big destruction or as much as it was, and then they could have just carried on the sequence from Xavier's school. So that's just my little 2 cents in with that. Is there anything that we are forgetting?
At the end.
Yes, go ahead.
If you watch the very, very, very end, the credit scene.
The after credit scene, yes.
When Project X.
Weapon X program, yes.
Weapon X is put into the secret case. We kind of get a. I want to call it an Easter egg or a preview?
Yeah, preview is probably a good word. Now, there is a post-credit scene to this movie, which hopefully you have seen, and you did stay to watch that. You always should with these films. And that has the guys going through the Weapon X facility and retrieving a vial of Logan's blood. It says Weapon X, and you can see just at the top of the vial, DNA. Now, when that's placed in the briefcase and closed, we see Essex Corp written on the briefcase. And that is most likely talking about Nathaniel Essex, aka Mr. Sinister, one of the classic X-Men villains, who apparently did have a small part in the Weapon X program as it was being developed. But basically, Mr. Sinister, if you're unfamiliar, is a Victorian-era scientist. So he's very old, but his thing is manipulating mutants' DNA, manipulating genes. He has various powers of his own, strength, shape-shifting, things like that. But again, this is really just a classic X-Men villain. So he's either taking this to maybe take some of Wolverine's abilities into himself, or the other rumor that this could imply to is the development of X-23, the Wolverine clone, the female Wolverine clone that was actually first revealed in the X-Men animated series back in the 90s. So that is a good couple of possibilities that we have. So looking forward to seeing Mr. Sinister in an upcoming X-Men film, and possibly X-23, since Hugh Jackman will be leaving the series and they may want another Wolverine type character in. And this would be great because it would add a wonderful, strong female heroic character who really does kick a lot of butt. So, overall, we enjoyed it. It was a fun film. Yeah, it's got holes, it's got issues, but it's going in the DVD collection. It's going to be watched several times. Again, it was fun. Not as meaty, not as weighty as some of the other superhero Marvel films that have been released lately. Not quite the same fun irreverency as Deadpool, not the same dourness of Batman v Superman, and not the same kind of intellectual satisfaction that Civil War gave. But still, a fun popcorn summer movie that I think you'll have fun with. All right, so I'm D.
Foxtime.
And this was our review of X-Men Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Thanks much for joining. If you did enjoy this, hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. There should be a red subscribe button right over here in the corner. Yeah, that's it right there.
Here?
And if you do have any comments or ideas, thoughts of your own, just add them in the section below. We'll respond the best we can.
Down there.
There
should
you
be
go.
a box saying, make a comment on this video. Then you type in, I liked it too, or I didn't really like this part, or something like that.
And we'll talk about it. It'll be fun. All right. That's it. We're out of here. Thanks so much. Guys, take care.
Check out my channel.
I'll add links to that in the section below.
Yeah.